So that was Sabaton with The Last Stand on 89.7 FM, mywcwp.org.
If you have any requests and they're not Sabaton, chances are we won't play them.
That's weird, the phone's ringing. I don't think it's ever rung.
Usually for interviews, but that's about it, but we don't have anything scheduled.
WCWP.
Why don't you guys play more Five-Finger Death Punch?
Hi, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
How'd you know?
I could hear the cats on the other end of the phone. Do you have a request or something?
Damn it! Well, actually, I do have a request. I request that you acknowledge me as your Shred Shack Pro Wrestling Intercontinental Champion for life.
You didn't win that belt, you just made it so you could feel like you won something.
Didn't you make a belt too?
Quiet, you.
Well, I do have something here that wasn't homemade or won.
Is that an authentic Marty's Girl umbrella printed with the Bullet Club logo that's not available either on the Ring of Honor or New Japan Pro Wrestling websites?
The very one. Now, I personally have no need for this, and I know how much you'd love to get your hands on it, and it'd be a damn shame if it suddenly, I don't know, caught fire. Caught fire. Intercontinental Champion for life.
Reese, I have to go. You know what to do.
No, I don't! Well, time to do the show myself.
Ow. Party Man Gland's plan. Oh shit!
Today was a good day.
Again, dude?
How you doing there, buddy?
Why do all our interactions involve me getting punched in the face?
Looks good for the upcoming commercials.
How did you even get in here anyway?
Lindsay, let me in.
Hey babe, Pat's here. Okay, bye.
Thanks, babe.
Should you wear that all the time?
Yes. So, since you're here, I guess we might as well work on something together?
Yeah, they work. Oh, should probably get Reece in on this. Hey man, how you holding up?
Where have you been? You've been gone for 2 days.
I've been standing here laughing for 2 days?
What are you still doing in the studio?
You were my ride!
Alright, I'll be back soon. Just don't push any of the buttons in the studio. I have them all carefully calibrated. Even the slightest change could totally destroy the show.
Yeah! What?
Stop that! We're doing a review. You want in?
Yeah!
So, what are we reviewing?
That good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah!
So, it's been a while since we talked about a heavy metal band from the Middle East, huh?
We've done that before?
Well, no, but it's not really from lack of trying. In the United States, we don't really hear a lot about bands from this part of the world. There's a few high-profile cases, like Across Aquata, since they made that Heavy Metal in Baghdad movie, but even with places with huge populations, such as India, they don't really cross cultural borders to America as easily. Unless they sound like Bloody would. Not that I'm complaining.
Orphaned Land was formed in Israel in 1991 under the original name Resurrection. They have released 6 albums to date, not including split albums with Sentence and Amas Afur. Afur?
Afur.
Afur. And despite forming almost 30 years ago, have had some consistent members, with at least the lead vocalist and bass player being mainstreams of the band since its inception.
Their lyrics all reference religion, but not in a hurtful, prideful, or even single-minded fashion. The words that are shouted from these songs are all expressions of peace, love, and unity between all peoples. Sometimes this went against the societal standards of the countries they were representing, and Orphaned Land's stance on performing their music for everyone who's been willing to hear it is widely regarded as a pretty heroic act. Hell, there was even an online petition for the band to receive a Nobel Peace Prize in 2012.
Unsurprisingly, this is a concept album. Unsung Prophets and Dead Messiahs is described by Cody as one of the most furious and angry albums in their history. Not particularly towards any particular people, but just a situation that there is injustice in the world and nobody's doing anything.
Did any of you know that every year, a random example, in India, 70,000 kids are being kidnapped? Second question is, did you hear about Kim Kardashian? Do you know who she is? That shows us some small part of the problem.
Pretty awful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is awful. Kim Kardashian kidnaps 70,000 kids a year?
The story of the cave by Plato is the basis for the album. Does anybody out there know this story?
I mean, well, obviously I know it, but I'd really like to hear Pat's interpretation of it.
Well, clearly, Dan has a much different perspective on this, and I'd really prefer to hear it from your side of things.
No.
I know the story.
Oh, thank God.
The story is about people who have lived their whole lives in a cave. The only truth that they know are shadows on the walls. One day, a man in the cave is released from his binds that keep him there, and he discovers the world outside the cave, and seeing the world for what it really is. He tries to convince them of the world beyond the cave, and they think that he's insane and kill him. And that's the end of the story. Heartwarming.
So it's like The Matrix?
No, not even a little bit.
Logan's Run.
Yeah, sure, whatever. But the band wanted the allegory of the story to continue and relate to modern society, and how the cave is society as a whole, and the people who have represented the freed men in history have been killed themselves. Jesus Christ, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Powdered Toast Man.
Wait, what?
I'm kidding. I didn't think there was any references to Gandhi.
Well, that reminds me, actually. We here at the Shred Shack don't like to be too overly political or religious when we're describing albums, which is going to be hard for this. So, we would like to introduce the handy-dandy look over there button. Now, we're not exactly sure what it does. It's still in its beta phases, but every time we try and tread the line and go a little too far, we're going to hit the button and completely change the subject.
So the president tweeted earlier today.
Nope. And just like that, I completely forgot what we were talking about. So, with that out of the way, let's get to it. This is the new one from Orphaned Land. Would you mind backing up a little bit?
This is my filming wall.
Yeah, but I'm a guest.
You ate my taco!
I ate half of your taco. Go to the corner.
Fine. Taking this with me.
And now for something completely different.
If you've ever listened to Orphaned Land before, I feel like this is the perfect introduction to the band. It's a well-rounded shot to the gut featuring all that the band has to offer. The distinctly Middle Eastern instrumentation, soulful, powerful vocalization, this wonderful mix of heaviness along with the traditional folk sound. The lyric that sums up the entire album is, "One can easily forgive a child who's afraid of the dark, but one cannot forgive a man who's afraid of the light." It's one of the best tracks altogether on the album.
I have to second Pat's thoughts here, as I found this track to be immediately enticing, due in large part to the explosive introduction of the instruments, giving off a strong Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden vibe, which is kind of fitting considering the theme of the album, as well as the hypnotic appeal of the chorus, which contains the aforementioned line, and the crushing breakdown and solo sections. As an opening track, this song gets everything right, acting not necessarily as an overture, but as a proper presentation of the band's style, which for me as a newcomer is essential.
Great start to the album, it brings elements from all styles that Orphaned Land performs. from heavy growling to ancient Arabian music. The guitar solo mixes well, even if a bit basic and not as technical. And also a flute, clarinet. What is this wind instrument called?
I think it's an oboe.
Anyway, really cool. And coming in at 8 minutes and 10 seconds, it's a marathon song.
I just really hope that this joyful, inviting sound really continues into the next song. Translated to English, the introduction means, "Hail to Satan, Lord of the Wind." So this took a pretty sudden turn.
Sorry, I got distracted by the drum solo intro. I hope they mean the greatest martial arts champion that saved us all from Sal.
You're actually gonna fight? I thought you were just somebody's hype man.
I am the harp! Kill him!
One of my favorites on this album. It is well put together and very brutal. It tells of many tragedies that transpire between groups of people, usually perpetrated by their leaders, and how their followers do everything they can to appease those leaders.
I mean, you did know the theme of the album. It wasn't going to be Our Guest, the fake news remix. I want to press the button on myself, but I think I'll wait for something more egregious.
I'm on it.
Wait, he has a button too?
Well, yeah, it's not just sound effects in there, and some of those buttons haven't been touched for a very long time for a very good reason.
In the meantime, though, I'll say that this album is actually off to a brilliant start, with this track tearing away any sort of comfort that may have been elicited by the previous track, due in large part to the lyrical content. This may be one of the very few instances where references to dick measuring is not met with giggling.
This is probably going to be seen as the most commercially accepted track from the album. It was released as a single and everything, and I can't say it's a bad choice. It's a very good track that seems to focus more on the aggression and the steadily heavy bass. Every now and then, a straightforward metal track from them is not unwarranted. Both the next tracks, In Propaganda and The All-Knowing Eye, kind of follow the same overall theme, which is, as long as something is controlling you, you'll never experience what life truly has to offer. In the track-by-track, the singer describes this as very reminiscent of the book 1984. And since the title of the album, Unsung, Prophets and Dead Messiahs, is supposed to relate to modern-day figures, maybe he thinks that Orwell was one of those unsung prophets.
I've got a feeling bringing up 1984 will spark a political debate. So...
You have a muffin button in the studio?
Yeah, it was in our contract.
And you didn't tell me.
You would abuse it.
Yeah, Dan, you gotta be responsible.
One of my favorite things about metal as a genre is its limitless potential to evolve. From Propaganda to Yedidi, the cultural influences are in full swing, and to no one's surprise, they work exceptionally well.
It's a short story of a woman sold into slavery by her lover, assuming her husband. Unfortunately, I don't speak Yiddish, so I have a hard time translating it. Anyone else?
Not a clue.
Unfortunately, this is also the point where things admittedly start to run together and stretch beyond its source. What I mean by that is the first two tracks established the conflict pretty well, and with some tweaking could have infused the tracks that follow without having separate songs. The album loses steam for a bit and doesn't go back to full force until after the halfway point.
I have to agree here. The song itself is nice enough, and it shows the band's roots, allowing them to sing a traditional Hebrew track and still have it somewhat fit. But as somebody just listening in on this one, it doesn't really offer anything that different that I would have preferred. And it's maybe a stretch to include it.
Awaken my sanity. Slavery falls to the ground.
In following the allegory again, this track, Chains Fall to Gravity, describes the man actually escaping from the cave for the first time. There are times where I feel like this album has a pacing problem. Some tracks I feel are added unnecessarily and don't offer too much different from the one before it, and some songs should be combined because their lyrical content is too similar. This track, though, I think I have to give it a pass because the presentation is brilliant.
This is another song with a very slow build in it until it gets to the chorus, when in comes the chorus. Sadly, it goes back to the slow ballad sound again afterwards until eventually it gets to another build-up, but it's just so long, I had to skip over it.
I did not get that feeling from this at all. This song itself is one of my favorites on the album for a few weird reasons. Not just because in the first major guest appearance on the album, Steve Hackett from Genesis lends his guitar and gives the song a huge ballad feel. This actually isn't Hackett's first work with the band. They had contributed some material for his Night Siren album a few years back. I'm in a weird position with this band where I really like the folk and the heavy elements combined, but only in certain sections overall. Like, especially when it comes to the guitar work on this song. I absolutely love the solo.
I know that voice. That's Hansi.
Everybody shut up! I have an erection!
Hands down, number one, love this song, and no, not just because Hansi from Blind Guardian is on it. The two different vocal styles work well mixed together, and it just sounds so good, and I hope they do more in the future. The upbeat tempo is a great change from the ballad-heavy album. Just listen and enjoy.
For me, the track Like Orpheus picks the album back up, and it's not just because of the cameo of Hansi, I will chew all the scenery Kirsch.
Far be it for me to criticize a moment of Hansi from Blind Guardian being anywhere at any time, and he is a definite welcome addition to the album's sound. His vocals giving a slightly different amount of power and soul in addition to Orphaned Land's already established tone. Like Orpheus is destined to become one of Orphaned Land's greatest tracks ever, and it's no surprise that a lot of that has to do with Mr. Valhalla over here.
The pace quickens, the elicited discomfort over injustice returns, and a sense of urgency is exuded in the sweeping vocal melodies. Unfortunately, what follows suffers from the same fate as what precedes this.
My problem seems to be with the placement of the song. And I know that it's kind of hard to argue because this song has to be here in order for the album story to make sense. That's how concept albums work. But tonally, it just seems like a jump up in energy for this song only, and it shoots right back down when it's over.
My bad.
Yeah, Left Behind and the track that comes before it, which is an acoustic break called Poets of Prophetic Messianism, once again are important if you look at it from a storytelling perspective, but I think they were only separated to make the album seem whole. This album could have done with a complete restructuring of sounds to make it flow from one track to the next a little bit smoother. Not to say there aren't good sounds here. I especially like the guitar break in the middle that picks up the energy for a few seconds. It's just a little off.
I think it's a well put together song, and I noticed something very specific while I was listening to it on Spotify. They actually censor the song with a very audible beep. I actually went back and listened to other tracks, and it happens in several songs, including in Caves when they say, you know, the name for God, you know. You censored me, didn't you?
Yep.
Anyway, they do it here as well. But I can't tell what it is this time they are actually censoring. But anyway, not a bad song.
Night and torturing my soul. Lord, I'm alone out here. What use can I find in this outer world if I'm not my brother?
Alright, I get the feeling I need visuals to this album as a whole. When's the movie coming out?
My Brother's Keeper wasn't already a movie?
I mean, Reece is not wrong here. With the elongation of particular story points, not unlike how these 3 tracks discuss the people remaining in the cave and the decision to go back and rescue them, it might be easier to consider this to be the score to a film that doesn't exist. I consider myself fairly adept at visualizing things based on music alone, but have a hard time substantiating this much from seemingly minor events. As before, the music is great, but just feels like filler.
I believe that this song is a literal fight between the angel and the devil on a person's shoulders. A person's eternal struggle between good and evil is definitely winning this one.
Take my
The album picks up again near its conclusion with the soaring Take My Hand, wherein the hero tries to convince the people to follow him out of the cave. Coupled with the consistent aggression of the music, there's an aura of desperation that underlies the fear of the futility of the hero's actions, and the closing audio clip regarding a slave's learned love of enslavement is a brilliant lead into the finale.
I don't think there was ever more of a time where the album needed a swift kick in the ass, and Take My Hand, I think, gives the album a little bit of much-needed momentum. As the time wears on, you get the feeling that there isn't much differentiation or interesting motions in the songs, but when they occur, they're not only welcome, they are necessary. And this is probably the best way to lead into a song like Only the Dead Have Seen the End of War.
The armies moved on and on to the next land that the bloodshed was won. Oh, Father, read us in the time of reigning. Remember a prison of ritualist deeds.
Here's where the story finally comes to a head. After failing to convince them to see the world that awaits them outside the cave, the people turn on him.
The music here is so well crafted, and this song completely sucks you into not only the story, but also the tone of the band as a whole. There is so much to love here, from the amazing guitars and percussion, the hurried, almost dancing tone that the song takes toward the middle, not to mention the singer of At the Gates, Thomas Lindberg. Even just the vocals shouting, "Kill him," to explain the crazed mentality of the cave people.
Now this may seem contradictory to the band as a whole, but I love the songs that are more aggressive, using the folk elements as additions rather than the basis. When the guitars and percussion take over with the other instruments acting as accents, it really draws you in. This is such a great track.
So the only thing that will save us is true.
God, I love this song. I didn't think I'd like a track on this album more than Chains Fall to Gravity, but I was really wrong.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah, every damn time! I said nothing religious or political there. Why'd you hit the button?
You were having a moment, and you stole my wall. The album ends in a similarly epic fashion as it began, but with lamentation to bear its weight. The monologue mourns yet remains hopeful in the presence and perseverance of these unsung prophets and dead messiahs. But the ending voiceover is absolutely chilling.
Uniting all the people referenced either directly or indirectly as unsung prophets and dead messiahs, with a track that's not really a song, it's more of a spoken word piece with some brilliantly epic music behind it.
They lived and died here. They are always among us. Those unsung prophets, dead messiahs.
With that clip alone, this becomes the absolutely perfect and honestly breathtaking ending to a story. And I would rank it up there with Evergrey's When the Walls Go Down as how you should end a compelling concept piece.
I also read an interview for this, and while it does represent everyone who fits under that banner, it has a special dedication to Victor Jara. And after looking him up, apparently Jara was a Chilean singer and considered a revolutionary who was tortured and killed by the Chilean government after a violent coup. Nope.
Nope.
Did it work?
Nothing over here. What happened?
Oh shit! Go! Oh shit!
Got him on the ropes!
Oh shit!
Got him on the ropes!
Go!
What the fuck just happened?
So to sum up, let's look at some pros and cons.
No, we're not doing that anymore.
I was ready for it that time.
Sorry, man. Let's get to it. I think the biggest overall positive I can glean from the album, other than the fact that it sounds good, is that it always sticks to the story it's trying to present. It has a massive storytelling presence, and the atmosphere it strikes is pure and concise. The music accompanies the message, the lyrics are powerful and have a point, and most importantly, the band sticks to its guns and weaves a tale through music that only good concept albums can do. It's still an Orphaned Land album on the surface, but with a deeper look, it all led to something a little bit more important at the end.
My personal experience with Orphaned Land is limited to a live version of Sapari that we played on the radio show about 1,000 times. So Unsung Prophets and Dead Messiahs is my first full exposure to the band, and as an overall product, it's pretty damn good. I'm always pleased to know that metal has evolved and is still evolving beyond my admittedly limited knowledge of the genre, and Orphaned Land's incorporation of cultural influences is among the cream of the crop, and I don't want the comments that follow to detract from my overall opinion of the product.
For the con, I feel like this is an album that works a lot better when you listen to 1 or 2 tracks and then stop for a while. A lot of the album muddles together and it's hard to tell what makes one song different from the other for certain tracks. Maybe it's because I'm not as familiar with this style of music, but I feel the same way about this that I do about certain Amorphous releases. Sometimes all you need is one song before it starts to run together. Songs like In Propaganda and Take My Hand are enjoyable, but they feel like continuations of the same thing. Then that's where I start to lose interest, despite my insistence that I don't want to.
My gripe comes from their use of the source material. Now, all jokes aside, I am on board with the intentions of the narrative, but will admit that some parts, or tracks as a whole, feel extraneous in the confines of the narrative. At some points, it takes 3 or 4 songs to do what could be done in one. Now, when I have gripes such as this, I try to give the benefit of the doubt, especially when considering something this ambitious. Though I may say it takes too long to get to the next major point of the narrative with too much time taken on establishing the conflict, outlining the escape, and subsequent return and downfall of the hero, perhaps that was part of the intention.
When talking about religious or political messages in heavy metal, or all music in general, I'm always going to be on the fence with it. The music needs to stand on its own without the theme behind it, so that a casual listener can enjoy it. And the theme can't be shouted at you in a way that distracts you from the band's overall sound. In my experience, I don't like being preached to through music. I like listening music to escape from the world around me, not to be reminded of its problems. But there are times where I find it much more frustrating than others, even if I agree with the message. Ministry, for example. We get it. You hate the government. But the way that Orphaned Land does it is a little bit more artistic and so much more centralized on a theme of achieving unity rather than pointing blame.
The worldly issues the album lambasts are not isolated incidents. They are prevalent, seemingly perpetual, and certainly not one-sided. They should not be addressed in a fashion that minimizes their importance, and regardless of where you stand on any issue therein, significant change does not happen quickly, with one often finding him or herself having to repeat the same argument, or having multiple people repeat said argument across generations. If the point here was to weave a more expansive web of the perceived ills of the current state of affairs by giving more time to particular transgressions and ill responses to change, then I can get behind it from several standpoints. But I still feel that it hampers the flow of the album as a whole when they could just as easily tell that same story in a more concise yet equally powerful manner.
There's not much you could say about Orphaned Land as a whole other than their existence in general is a good thing. They are a force for peace in an unsteady world. And that always needs to be taken into consideration when talking about their music. So even if the album has flaws,
which it certainly does,
I'm still glad it exists. And I'm glad it's getting a fairly good reception. I want people to hear this band. And if this is their first time doing it, I'm more than okay with that. So thank you guys for watching, we appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out all the other videos, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us all on Twitter. We have a Zazzle page open where you can buy some Shred Shack merch, get some t-shirts, some stickers, all that good stuff. And until next time, remember, life is too short to listen to bad music.
Hey Pat, I've hit every button except the one do not press under any circumstances. I'ma press it.
Whoa, don't you hit that!
I'ma do it.
No!
You took my taco plate.
Hey, I thought you died. Muffin.